Hello and welcome to the EDHRECast. My name is Joey Schultz and I'm joined as always by my fantastic co-hosts. Up first, he has strayed from the light side of the Force and now he's turned to the dark side. Extortionist. It's Matt Morgan.
So I really wanted to be a blacksmith when I was growing up, but I didn't really want to turn to a life of crime. I hear they're charged very often with forgery.
Hey, that's a good one. I like the energy of that one. That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of stole it. Well, you might say I was stealing the joke, but...
Deep breaths. I'm going to be
Joey,
okay.
Don't lose your temper on that one. It'll be
temper!
Okay.
Oh, damn, the triple.
There it is.
Well done.
You may proceed. I've run out of jokes for this one.
That was awesome. Up next, he just says morning and not good morning, because if it was a good morning, he'd be playing EDH right now. It's Dana Roach.
Did you know if you drink the fluid from a magic 8-ball, you can see the future? No, seriously, trust me, I know a guy who did it, and right after, he said he was going to be sick and die, and he got sick and died.
Wow.
Absolutely a thing that happens.
You really hammered that one home, Dana, so let's...
We are moving on.
Sparks are flying.
With our intros, you guys, holy wow. Anyway, listeners, we appreciate you, and this is the EDHRECast. EDHREC is the best deck building resource on the web for the Commander format, compiling data from deck lists all over the internet to provide helpful recommendations for new Commander decks. And here on the podcast, what we like to do is give all of that data a little more context. Dana, tell us, what is it that we're talking about in this week's episode?
We are talking about our Commander aspirations for 2022.
Yeah, the things that we hope happen in 2022. We're kind of making this episode as a way of hopefully manifesting those things, so that if we talk about them now, they'll definitely happen, right? The future sight, the 8-ball thing, Dana, is that what we're... Right?
Right, exactly. That was the inspiration, for sure.
I mean, I think this is more of a foretell type of episode, not a... manifest
kind of a scry-esque situation.
Yeah. If we're making those mechanic jokes.
Yeah, it's a topic that we had touched on at the end of year episode that we did just a little bit ago at the end of 2021, but we actually want to go into more detail about some of the things that we hope we see in the sets coming in 2022 and the different things that we hope manifest themselves in EDH as well for 2022. So it should be a whole bunch of fun. Real quick, before we jump into our topic, let's pause and give a huge thank you to the folks at the Command Zone. They handle all of the post-production work on our podcast, making it look as spiffy as it does. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors for the show as well.
The EDHRECast is sponsored by Card Kingdom and TCG Player, the two online retailers that are the equivalent of getting ramp and card draw in mono white. Just go to EDHREC and click on the card in question. Down below will be a vendor link. Choose that, and you can support both the site and the show.
And if you would prefer to support the show directly while also still getting some awesome perks for yourself, you can do so over at patreon.com/EDHRECast. We have patron tiers of all levels, whether you want to join the awesome Discord community that we have going on, you want to get some awesome swag that we send out, you can do all that and more over at patreon.com/EDHRECast. We even have a very special tier where this one person went to, and they got a very special shout out for this episode. Give a shout out to Albert Lim, who... he didn't really go out on a limb because he just signed up and went to EDHRECast.
You said you were out of jokes. None of that. None of that. Albert Lim, thank you.
The irony of me running out of blacksmith jokes is real up there.
No! Oh my... Matt.
But Albert, anyways, thank you for being a Patreon, or patron, I should say. We definitely appreciate the support.
Thank you so much, Albert. And Matt, I'm going to need you to sit down. These blacksmith jokes, I'm not going to be able to deal with it this episode. You are too dang good at this.
Has he quenched your thirst for blacksmith jokes?
Let's move on. Let's go to our main topic. We are talking about the things that we hope happen for EDH in this coming year, 2022. Let's just, I guess, briefly overview the stuff that we know is going to happen in 2022. There are a whole bunch of sets upcoming, and we'll talk about those first and then get to some general hopes and aspirations later on in the show. For now, let's start off with the different sets that will be happening. This year, we're going to be seeing Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, Streets of New Capenna, Unfinity, and a new Commander Legend set, Battle for Baldur's Gate, as a Dungeons & Dragons theme. We're going back to Dominaria, and there will be a Brothers War set, which is was like, whoa. We've even got other sets like Double Masters and Jumpstart, and I can't even imagine the number of precons we're going to get this year. But let's just try and tackle those things one at a time. There's so much going, but let's start with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Dana, let's start it off with you. What is something that in this specific upcoming set is maybe something that you hope to see for EDH when it comes to those upcoming standard sets?
When you think back to Kamigawa, I'm guessing they're going to try to call back to the original set. So, that was a very heavily legend influenced set. There was way more legendary creatures in it than we usually see. They probably can't recreate that since every set is Legend Matters these days, kind of.
I mean, you're not wrong. We do get like 30 legends every set now, and that's a lot less specific to a Kamigawa setting. It's sort of just like everywhere now. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
What I would like to see them revisit is maybe some of the other legendary themes we saw. We got a cycle of legendary lands first time through in Kamigawa. There was kind of a minor theme of legendary equipment in the set. I'd like to see a little more of that, I think. More legendary lands come back, legendary equipment, just things that are legendary besides legendary creatures I think would be fun. There's plenty to call back to with the previous set. Kamigawa is a set with pretty deep history. So that's something I'd like to see them reference for sure.
Well, Dana, you said there were a large number of legends, I would say, compared to what we were getting back then, because if you would have made Kamigawa, the original Kamigawa block now, it would just blended in. Like it would just used be a set. Yeah, it used to be Legends Matter, but every set since War of the Spark has had a Legends Matter sub-theme. They just haven't said it. And so I would like to see... I'm expecting with the return to Dominaria, with how many legends we got the first time around there, we're going to get so many legends that I hope instead of everything is a legend and all of that, I hope that they make the legends that are around matter as opposed to literally everything is a legend. Because when we had some stuff like that, like Kamigawa block, like there was a lot of lore, there was a lot of story that was unexplored. So I'd like to see some of the main characters really get a spotlight, because that's one thing I feel, at least in the cards themselves of the past couple sets, we've kind of had that lost. You don't know who the main character is because there are so many characters. So letting a main character kind of stand out, I hope that they do this, especially with the Brothers War set, because I remember reading the novels when I was a kid. That was one of my favorite things. And I remember the sets most vividly by who the main characters were. I don't know who the main characters were of the past, and I would like to see who the big players in Kamigawa are.
So a thing that's kind of been theorized online is that since we saw Vorinclex suddenly appearing in Kaldheim last year, that potentially in Kamigawa upcoming we'll also see one of the Praetors has been infiltrated into this setting as well. Most people are speculating, I think, that it would be the Jin-Gitaxias character. Matt, is that maybe a thing that you'd like to see in the story as well? Like, are we getting, inklings of the beginning of Phyresis spreading around the multiverse? Is that the type of story that you'd be into, or is that not a thing that you want to see when it comes to story, or is that too specific? I don't know.
A lot of that is kind of wishful thinking. People saw it once, they want it to become the norm. If it happens, it happens. Like, that's great. I enjoy being surprised. Okay. I don't like to speculate a lot because I like to see what other people come up with and create. So as far as the Praetors being around, I haven't seen anything that makes me believe it's going to happen at all, much less Jin-Gitaxias specifically. So if it happens, cool. I want to see how they express that. If not, I'm not going to be disappointed either, because I think letting stories stand on their own is also a good thing.
I want to make a bet. I feel like you and I should make a bet, because I hope it does.
Okay.
Happen. I do want to see it. That is okay.
But wasn't that also rumored in Strixhaven and it didn't come to pass? Like, that was the one everyone was talking about as well.
Yeah, very true, Dana. Very true. Here's a, we can decide on the terms of that bet later, Matt. For now, let's move on to another thing that I do personally expect to see.
I will put my monocle on and we'll have a gentleman's bet.
Okay. Here's the thing that I specifically expect that we'll see in Kamigawa, and that I am also excited to see how this evolves, is also, we've seen the shrines appear in Kamigawa settings throughout different sets before. We had them in the original Kamigawa set. We had those Hondens, and then we had new shrines appear in a core set as well, along with a 5-color shrine, which was certainly, a whole bunch of fun. But they had a small weird evolution among them where the first shrines had to deal with the upkeep, and then the next shrines had to deal with the main phase. So I would bet that if we see new shrines in this upcoming Kamigawa set, that they will have stuff to do on the end step. That is my hope, that we'll see a new evolution of how the shrines work, and maybe even that we get another dedicated 5-color Shrines commander. A lot of players have defaulted to Captain Sisay, the 5-color version of her, to have a Shrine deck, but I wonder if we might see another legend that also is very Shrine specific to help flesh out that recurring theme that we've seen throughout that setting. So that's something that I'm putting out there into the universe and hoping that we get to see, especially with the end step focus, because it would be another area for the Shrines to explore.
See, I would absolutely love that, because unlike Cody, the Codex, or just any just very general and broad 5-color commanders, having something specific to kind of dial in. So, a 5-color commander, but it really only benefits Shrine Tribal. I think that would be very, very cool to see. I like that they're giving us a lot of different options for very specific themes. And so continuing down that path, especially in Neon Dynasty, I think that'd be a great move.
Mm-hmm. So let's move now to another set that we know is upcoming. And Dana, this is one that you have some thoughts and feelings about, specifically Streets of New Capenna, which we've heard will be a 3-color set upcoming. I'm not sure if we've confirmed whether it will be a shard set or a wedge set. So if it will be like, the Jeskai and the Teamers, or if it will be more of the Espers and the Bonds and stuff like that. But Dana, what specifically is something that you are excited to see or hope to see when it comes to Streets of New Capenna?
The flavor of this set I like. I like the idea of multiple crime families. It's kind of a weird thing we haven't really seen before on a Magic plane for sure. I think there's a lot of kind of trope-ish things they can explore with crime families, whether it's like the traditional American view of the mob, looking at things like Al Capone, or even up to the Sopranos. There's a lot of ground they can tread, kind of referencing things there. If you want to expand the lens to the world, there's a lot of other kind of regional tropes they can explore that might also overlap with other sets. We are getting, things like ninjas and Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. They could very easily, reference things like the Yakuza or something as one of the color combinations for that particular crime family as well. So I think there's a lot of interesting things they could do there. Even like one of them could be pirates or something. Pirates are basically just mobsters with scurvy, right? So there's a lot of ground they can tread in terms of different themes for the individual shards or wedges. And I'm going to guess wedges because we just got shards fairly recently.
Other way around. We got wedges recently when it came to Ikoria.
And you're right. Yeah, sorry. Yep. So I'm going to guess that they will do the opposite this time, and maybe we'll get some triomes as well. But that catches my eye more than anything. I'm really interested in the kind of flavor of this set versus maybe the mechanics. Also in part because I don't love 3 colors. It's just too many choices. So I'm kind of focusing on the flavor here versus the mechanics to a degree.
Well, I'm out of things to add in because Dana looked ahead and stole my notes about triomes being completed would be a nice touch if they do shards. But yeah, no, I think that just they don't get very many opportunities to do 3-color lands. Since we did get the wedge triomes, having the shards would be a nice touch. But other than that, like New Capenna, like I mentioned kind of about Neon Dynasty, I have no real expectations. I hear there's going to be some demons and some very cool kind of creature types. So I would like to see how those are expressed. But as far as what I'm looking for, man, just give us some 3-color support and that'd be neat.
Yeah, I think that's fair. 3 colors, Dana, as you mentioned, it has a lot of options, and it can be certainly very popular when you are able to play all of your favorite stuff, but it also can be difficult as a result of that. So it is a tough ground to look through. And the last time that we had a 3-color set, there were certainly a lot of very popular standouts. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves. I'm hoping personally, since we haven't had a shard-specific set in a while, that those are the color combinations that we look back to, more like the Jund and stuff. And it would be cool to see new evolutions in those 3-color combinations, because I feel like we do have a definite expectation of what each color combination is about. And I like it when a set comes along that breaks us out of those, the way that Strixhaven did for the Boros color combination, or specifically the Lorehold combination. And it was able to expand our way of thinking about that color combination. That is definitely a thing that I would love to see, is like, I have one expectation of what Jund has always meant, and now I can explore those colors in a new, different type of theming that, I don't know, I just think it makes for a really nice exploratory gameplay when we're able to do stuff like that, I guess.
Well, and on the theming topic too, kind of like what Dana hinted to, if they do go forward with shards, I'm really curious how the Naya, the red, green, and white shard, and then the Bant or Bant, excuse me, I don't have an aunt. But
I'm sorry I pronounced it weird, Matt. I'm sorry.
The green, white, and blue shard, how those are expressed in organized crime, because you don't really think of those as very like criminally minded color combinations. So how those fit into that world, I think actually is going to be kind of interesting to see too.
Yeah. Bend those colors around, put them into new scenarios and force them into new things, because that can cause a lot of very interesting things to happen. It's a cool place to explore. Moving away from the self-serious streets of New Capenna, what it sounds like with those crime stuff, that it's focusing on there. There's also going to be that Unfinity set that comes out. And really, I only have one hope for Unfinity, and that's that there aren't any misprints for it, because instead of silver borders, they're going to be using the Acorn Hollow stamp. And that's like, I don't know, there are feelings to be had about that choice or whatever, but I just found it objectively hilarious that Wizards of the Coast messed up the Acorn Hollow stamp thing in the article that was devoted to explaining what the Acorn Hollow stamp thing is. There was a wrong version of it in that very sentence. So I just hope I hope that just remains as a thing that happens online with the images and not a thing that happens in the actual cards with the images. So that's my really only hope when it comes to Unfinity. I hope it is kooky and zany and all types of fun, but I hope that we don't get any misprints that might cause confusion. That's my only hope for that very silly set.
That's my big hope too for that set is I hope there's as little confusion about what is able to be played in regular Commander and what's not. I'm not hopeful, but we'll see.
Yeah.
This will be the set where I will just wait till it's all done, and I'll go to Scryfall and filter by new cards that are Commander legal and just pay attention to those 40 or so cards wherever we wind up getting, and ignore the rest of it. If you are someone who's into unsets, great. It's going to be a bit of a breather for me, and that's fine.
Yeah. I also specifically hope that the aesthetic remains very silly rather than any of the cards being super powerful, because it's just like, let's just let things stay silly. I want to be surprised if I see any of those cards, and I don't want to feel like the silly set has a bunch of stuff that I need to play. That's always a terrible feeling when new sets come out. It's just like, I don't want to see more, quote, staples for a format. I want to just let the sets rest alone as their own good times. Moving away from Unfinity, then, let's talk about another good time that is coming up. Commander Legends was a whole lot of fun in the past, and now we are going to be having a Commander Legends 2 Battles for Baldur's Gate, which is a D&D themed set, but as the Commander Legends experience. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that could happen here. Dana, let's throw it back to you. Is there anything that you hope to see in this revisitation to two different things that we've already had in Magic, both the D&D theming
Commander Legends 2 Baldur Boogaloo is the set I'm looking forward to most this year. Commander Legends 1 was amazing, and if it's just, all the stuff from that set repeated, that'll be good enough for me. The Baldur's Gate component doesn't necessarily do much for me, just because I don't know the lore. Like, that's not particularly important to me, but who cares? It's still going to be a Commander Legends set, right? So even if you don't know any of the Baldur's Gate stuff, you're still going to get a bunch of cool Commander Legends cards. It's got value added for D&D fans, and that's great too. For specific things I would kind of like to see the Will Cycle that we got the first time around. That's very easy to repeat. Those were all fantastic cards. I'd like to see them maybe have a go at that again. That's one thing I kind of am looking forward to.
So like the Jeska's Will and the Akroma's Will?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, new versions of those. Okay.
Yeah, so like that's something they could definitely repeat, and I'll be totally down for that. This is also a great place to reprint stuff as well. So I'm always looking forward to, like, Mystic Remora needs a reprint. Concordant Crossroads needs a reprint. This is the kind of place where they could do that, or they can give us foils of cards that haven't had foils before that we've been waiting for years, whether it's like Nature's Lore or the Medallion Cycle. So there's a lot of room here for not only cards that are just useful in this set, but they can check off some things off lists of things Commander players want. So there's a lot of things that can and probably will happen here, and I'm looking forward to all of it.
Gotcha. Matt, how about you?
Well, I would definitely second having the Will Cycle repeated. Some of it let us know, who the key figures were in the set, kind of whatever story was going on, but also they're just great cards. Just because Will was such a sleeper, like everyone kind of underestimated that card when it was released, and all of a sudden it's a $10 card because people realized, oh, holy cow, this is kind of sweet. So yeah, cards like that, I absolutely love that cycle. As far as something that I would like to see, I also was not big into the D&D stuff. So cards like Druid class and You Find Some Prisoners were very actually cool to circle back to, because even though I didn't really get the flavor on those specifically, having modal cards that if you play D&D, you got a little bit of that callback. But if you didn't, like, you still got some very good modal cards that, you know, were very, very playable in most instances. And like the class cards, those were just, I think they were well executed. They're a good way to kind of have saga style cards where you just get a bunch of value out of it. Mana sinks if you need it. So just I just love how they gave people the callbacks they wanted, but also if you didn't pay attention to it, you still got something cool out of it. Like, they were still interesting cards at least. So I would just like to keep seeing that, is even if you don't get the reference to Baldur's Gate, like I played the computer game on my PC way back in the day. I don't remember anything about it, but also if the callbacks are there, that's fine. But having cool cards in general, I think that's very fun to see.
So this is a set that I'll admit I probably have the most amount of trepidation for, because as we saw with the previous draft environment for Commander Legends, there were quite a lot of partners. And partners are a great way to make the draft portion of that set work. But they also took a very long time for the first Commander Legends set. And I just hope that with this quick turnaround to revisit that idea, that they've had enough time to balance any new partners that will most likely inevitably come out of this set too. And so it's just a big fingers crossed moment for me, because more partners means a lot of combinations. And I just hope that they all work fine and don't do, you know, the Vile Smasher Thrasios things that we saw the first time. You know, that's one of my big trepidations. And I just have my fingers crossed that it will all be smooth and fine.
I think that's a reasonable concern that I also share with you a little bit, Joey. There's an old saying that a band spends its entire career writing their first album, and then they have 6 months for the second one.
Exactly.
There's an element of that here, I think, for sure. So I get that.
Yep. So I'm willing it into the universe. That's all I'm doing.
I would have that concern, but I think with what we saw from most of Commander Legends, the original partners, they realized the mistakes. That we got a lot of dialed back partner designs. There were still some fun ones like Rugrat or Rograk. Sorry, excuse me. Dana's embedded that slang into my vernacular. But I'm not too worried about that. Yes, I do agree, but I'm maybe a little less concerned than the both of you are.
Yeah. So here are some other things too that I am kind of a little bit more excited about, I guess, for this set too, is that, I mean, have you noticed that there aren't any enchantment partner commanders? There are several that deal with artifacts, but I don't think there are any that deal with enchantments. And I think that could be something fun to look forward to for a new partner design. And also, when it comes to the lore of D&D, there is a famous sorcerer named Tasha in this lore, and my entire family plays Magic with me, including my mom, whose name is Tasha, and we desperately want there to be a commander for Tasha. We want Tasha to be able to make a Tasha deck I want that needs to be a thing. WotC, let us build a Tasha deck for Tasha. And actually, while you're at it, can you also make a legendary kangaroo so that Joey can build a Joey deck? Because that'd be great.
I mean, that means we need a welcome mat so I can build a mat deck. And I don't think that sounds very fun at all. So we'll skip.
We can partner that with Cody, the Codex, and the walking mat.
Matty the floor mat.
There we go, yeah.
The last thing that I'll note, and this is a little bit more critical when it comes to this, is that also for Commander Legends 2, for the original Commander Legends, we saw a lot of the advertising for it from WotC saying, it will contain powerful white cards. And it kind of contained a powerful white card. And then there were things like Seraphic Greatsword, and I'm just like, I hope that the marketing is a little bit more honest about it this time. This is my only thing. It's just another tidbit that I want to acknowledge, and that I hope the Commander Legends 2 indeed impresses us with powerful white cards. Plural. Let's move on to the Brothers War. Let's talk about that. Dana, tell us about what you might hope to see from the Brothers War set coming up next.
I've talked about flavor once already, but I guess I'll do it again. This is a perfect opportunity to reach back into Magic's history and give us cards finally for characters that have been referenced in the past of Magic, going back all the way to Alpha, Unlimited, up through Antiquities. You have characters like Drafna or Hercule or Jix.
I believe it's Gix. I'm pretty sure it's Gix.
Well, is it GIF or GIF? That's the question.
Or Banter Bont, I guess. Either way, we can get those characters. We have a really weird Mishra kind of that's semi-EDH playable with Possibility Storm, I guess, but we could get a less narrow Mishra along the way. There's just a lot of room to tap into that era of Magic's history here, and want to see all of it. I'm really, really looking forward to this kind of back-to-back dose of Magic lore between this and the next set we'll talk about after this.
Yeah. Watsy, I need an Ashnod. We've seen Ashnod's Altar for years and years, and it's really good. It's one of my favorite sacrifice outlets. I love you for making that. But who made the Ashnod's Altar? I need an Ashnod card, and I need it yesterday. Inject that into my veins. I cannot wait for an Ashnod character.
Joey,
and I hope it happens here.
We do have an Ashnod. We do have an Ashnod card. It's just a Vanguard card that nobody even knows exists anymore because
yeah, that's true.
At the risk of sounding like Dana, back in my day, we had a Vanguard format.
Gonna rule zero that for you into play, Matt.
There we go. But as far as like the set, this was when I first got into Magic. When I was a kid. So I'm very excited about this. I read all the Brothers War novels. Believe it or not, I can read. I know it surprises some of you, but just callbacks to some of these novels I'm so excited about because there was so much story going in there and as much story and lore as we say Kamigawa Neon Dynasty could have. Brothers War and Dominaria 2, like this is where I'm very excited because this is just calling back to when I first got into the game and really got into it. So I just want to see some of the flavor, some of the groundwork for a lot of what they had going on there. We had Antiquities, which was kind of, okay, the Brothers War happened and this is the after effects. So we get to see what happened like as it was going on. And I'm very excited about just that stance about some of the cards and how they're going to be expressed.
I'm also very excited. You mentioned there, this leads into not just the Brothers War, but also Dominaria United is another set coming up. And a return to Dominaria. I mean, the Dominaria set that we had, which contained those famous things like Muldrotha, for example, who is still among like the top 10 most popular commanders ever. Like, yeah, that was a banger of a set. And so it's really exciting to go back to that setting as well to see what else is going on with it. Dominaria United does have me just very excited. I specifically, one of the things I am really, really hoping to see from this setting is more stuff that expands, like the Lyra Dawnbringer that we had from that set, which was an Angel Tribal Commander, but it was mono white. I would love to see a new version for like Boros Angels or even Black-White Angels, because we had some Black-White Angel stuff going on in Kaldheim, but it didn't give us a fully dedicated Angel Commander from that set for that color combination. And I would love to see Dominaria, a plane that is famous for its angels, have more to do with angels as a tribe so that it can expand and learn and grow more about itself. And so that is a thing that I'm especially hoping to see in addition to the story stuff that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a 1-2 shot of amazing chances for lore callback to those things that when you first started playing the game and reading old cards, you were just so kind of mesmerized by in the storyline and wanted to see more of. And this is a chance to like get those things on cards 30 plus years later for some people. These sets are going to be fantastic, and I don't think I've been as excited for two kind of standard releases as I am for Brothers War and Dominaria United. This is absolutely what I want.
Nice.
Yeah, Dana, I'll be your geriatric partner here, and just I'm
Thank
very
you,
excited for all the callbacks and also too, like, they spend a lot of time on new sets building this whole new world, but the world is already built for them. So all they have to do is just expand upon that for Brothers War and Dominaria United. I'm excited to see what they add into the universe because they don't need to come up with this whole new thing. They just need to keep adding interesting things. And the last Dominaria set was very, very cool. They had the story to go along with it. I would love to see that continued.
Yeah, and Matt, we could have dinner at like 4:00 and then go watch Matlock reruns.
Go over to the Sizzler and watch Murder She Wrote.
Exactly.
That sounds like a wonderful night.
Okay, but hopefully in whatever set we get fewer of the objectively powerful Muldrothas or the accidentally powerful Tatiovas. You know, just randomly uncommon, most popular Simic commander just sitting right there in the uncommons of this set. You know, so I'm excited for it, but again, trepidatious. I hope that things are kept in line a little bit when it comes to the commander focus that we get from them. You guys are you guys are hysterical. I hope you have a good 4 p.m. dinner.
Well, and Joey, I know you're very concerned about getting another Tatiova, but for every Tatiova, there's a trash Capuchin. Well, excuse me, Wrath Capuchin.
Shots fired, sir.
Oops. I shouldn't say that. Like, Wrath is fine. I have Wrath in my Alila historic tribal deck. It works fine. But there are plenty of legends out there that are just, what was it, the Rorix Bladewing? They're just not good.
The Varix.
There it is. Yeah, I see. It's so good I can't even remember the name.
It's got 7 decks on EDHREC, so yeah, there's plenty of those.
Yeah, for every Tatiova, there's plenty of uncommon legends that we just don't care about.
All right, let's quickly here. I think we're all going to have the same answer for this next set that we know is coming up. There is going to be a return to the Double Masters all reprint set, so Double Masters 2022. So let's quickly talk about how we want good reprints. We would like to have more reprints. We want them across all of the sets. We want them across all of the precons. But since this is a reprint explicit set, I figure this is a good time for us to say, WotC, we would love good reprints, please. It would be delightful. This is a great opportunity to do it. Let's keep going with good reprints, please. Just yay, more here.
Yeah, I mean, you covered it right there, Joey. I just want them to put good cards to lower prices for everyone. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, also the first double masters. Yeah, yes, there weren't very many doubling cards, as much as we were led to believe, but it was still a very fine set. There was tons of reprints in there. I just want to see them do it again.
Matt, that's exactly what I was about to say. Is that like the first Double Master set contained a doubling season, and then like no other cards that said double or doubling on them really much, like no doubling cube or spark double or any of those. And so I'm just like, you could lean a little bit more into that, or cards that have more to do with double. Like this would be a great place for, branching evolution, which puts twice as many counters on your stuff, or anointed procession, which makes twice as many tokens. Like I would love to see more of those. Seems like a good opportunity, and those cards are redonkulously expensive. So hopefully this is just a good opportunity to have good reprints. But that is also true of basically every set this year. This is just an all reprint set, so we'll give it a special mention here. But man, it would be nice to not have signets be $5 sometimes. That's just where I'm at.
Or that two-headed dragon reprint we've been wanting for a long time.
What?
What?
Two-headed?
Two. It's a double.
Two.
Okay, do you want the two-headed ogre then too, Dana?
Yeah, might as well.
That's a real card, maybe. I don't know. Dana, you're old.
I think you need to get your geriatric partner there and check. Let's.
Oh, the geriatric jamboree has come to a close.
All right, let's go to the final set that we're talking about here. That is Jumpstart. They are going back to Jumpstart 2022 edition, and that was just a revelation of a product the first time it came around, as far as I'm concerned. So here's the thing that I want from an upcoming Jumpstart set. I want it to succeed, and I want to be able to play it with people, because that wasn't a thing we had the opportunity to do much the first time around. And I thought it was just such a dang good product, and I want to be able to actually do it in the real life. So Jumpstart, so many hopes and dreams riding on you, my friend.
Yeah, wear your masks, people, because I want to play Jumpstart in person.
There it is.
That's all I want. Like my hope for Jumpstart is the same as Commander Legends. I want a chance to play it as intended in person. That's all I want.
It's kind of the mythological set that supposedly exists, but no one's ever actually seen, and we're already getting a sequel to it. So yes, this is the thing that looked amazing the first time, and the few people I know that got to experience it really enjoyed it. I hope I can be one of them this time around.
Jumpstart is the cryptid of the Magic world.
Exactly, yeah.
And there are really cool designs going on in there. They were just like randomly we had Seth Rune, a Minotaur legend, just sneaking around in Jumpstart. Like, just what a cool place to have really strange designs to explore. It's not, as bidden by some of the expectations of standard sets or things like that. So Dana, like you mentioned, with some of the off-the-wall reprints, that could be another great place to have even more of them. Hopefully they are, more easy and consistent to acquire, given the way that Jumpstart is actually printed. It can sometimes be difficult to get some of those good reprints. But, the previous one had Greater Hoof Behemoth as a reprint, and that is the level of reprint that would be really cool to see across a whole bunch of products. So again, with the reprints, I'll shush about those now. I think that we need to move away from that, but I'm like, just Jumpstart. I've got heart eyes.
I just want to play it. That's all I want to do. I will download Arena to play Jumpstart. That's how much I want to play.
Bold. That's bold, man.
That is bold.
Go. Dana, you need to get your geriatric friend. And never mind. That joke is retired.
Hey, Grandpa's talking to the water heater again. Go get him.
Okay.
Check his meds.
Let's take a break from, now that we've looked over all of those different sets, and there are other things we didn't mention, like, new secret layers and all of those, the precons. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff, but there are also some general hopes that we have for what's upcoming in 2022. And we will get to that in the back half of the show. But for now, let's pause and challenge some stats, because it is one of our very favorite segments here on the podcast. There's so much data on EDHREC, but we don't always agree with it. Sometimes we think the cards see too much or too little play. So we love challenging the stats every single episode.
The challenge I have here today is for the card Wedding Announcement. In particular, in Odric Master Tactician decks, But basically any mono white deck where you're going to be attacking with creatures, which is almost every mono white deck, because that's basically how you win most of the time. Wedding Announcement is 2 and a white for an enchantment, and at the beginning of your end step, you put an invitation counter on it, and if you attack with 2 or more creatures, this turn you draw a card, otherwise you make a 1/1 white human creature token. And then the card flips when there's 3 or more counters on it, and it becomes an anthem to give your creatures +1/+1. Odric in particular just does what Wedding Announcement wants to do. It wants you to attack with creatures for Odric to even work. So like if you're playing Odric, that's what you're doing. You're playing mono white, so you need card draw. You should just be running Wedding Announcement in an Odric deck. And it's only in 3 literal decks in the EDHREC database of the 700 Odric decks. It just should be in way more. And again, if you are playing some kind of a mono white deck that's attacking with creatures, you should just be running it. It's a really, really good way to draw cards. It's in 10% as many decks as Secret Rendezvous. 10% as many decks as Secret Rendezvous. That seems like an oversight, and I think people need to take a long look at that card. Yes, the numbers are skewed because it's only been out for 2 months compared to 8 or 10 for Secret Rendezvous, but it just should see more play. So Wedding Announcement is a very decent card in white attack decks, and you should give it a look.
And can I just say real quick, Secret Rendezvous, the 3-mana spell where you...
I was waiting for this, Joey, from you.
Each draw 3 cards. Every time, I've seen that card in EDH games like 8 times now, and every single time I've seen it show up in EDH, the person who got the free cards won the game. I know that it is perfectly just anecdotal evidence, so if it has been successful for other people, that is good and fine, and that is... I'm just saying, in my experience... The person who's got the free cards has always won the game every time I've seen that card. So I'm just like...
Now, Joey, maybe that's the purpose of the card. Maybe you're framing it incorrectly.
I am willing to accept that. But you know what I'm not willing to accept? I'm not willing to accept the numbers on my challenge for this week. Masterful segue. I have our... Don't make fun of me, Matt.
That segue.
Except
right off a cliff.
Definitely make fun of me. Okay, my challenge here is actually one of our listener-submitted challenges. This comes from our listener, Ben Castor, which, by the way, great last name. That is awesome. Who's got a suggestion for Yarok the Desecrated, which is the Sultai commander that doubles up all of your ETB effects. Specifically, Ben points out that the card Oubliette, or if you're Dana, Obliute, the card Oubliette, the one that phases out an enemy creature, and if the Oubliette ever gets removed, then it comes back tapped. Oubliette, that is an enters the battlefield trigger. When it enters the battlefield, you phase out one of your opponent's things. So with Yarok in play, you could do the phase out of 2 different things. It makes the removal spell twice as effective. That's bonkers, especially because Oubliette is like a really powerful way of like making sure your opponents just do not have access to their commanders because they can't even recast it because it's phased out. It wasn't put back into the command zone. This is only showing up in 161 out of the 4,800 Yarok decks on EDHREC. And Ben, I agree with you. That seems really low. And also, dang, that's nasty synergy. So well spotted.
Yeah, this definitely sounds familiar, Joey. I think I challenged Oubliette fairly in the not too distant past on a different series of commanders. It's just a great card, so people probably should run it more in general for sure.
Oubliette, we're the name, the pronunciation that we're given.
Oubliette free.
Exactly. I'm excited to see how this continues to evolve throughout the course of this coming year. Matt, let's round it out with your challenge.
So my challenge this week, it popped up actually. So if you follow CAG member, Commander Advisor Group, Shivanbot, he's always posting random cards from Scryfall. And every now and then there's just cards that you see and you're like, how is this not played in more decks? So the card that Shivam posted recently, for me, that I think is being a little underplayed is Ley Weaver. And you can kind of say this also partners up with Lore Weaver. So both of those, they're only playing about 2,000 decks total. And so Ley Weaver is 3 and a green for Human Druid 2/2 that has partnered with Lore Weaver, but you can tap it to untap 2 target lands. And then Lore Weaver is the blue version of that, where you can pay 5 blue to draw a card. Now, that doesn't sound great, but if you're playing some big mana decks, like, say, Krufix God of Horizons, then this card, both of these cards actually, they seem to get a little bit better. So Krufix God of Horizons it just basically banks all of your unspent mana, turns it into colorless mana. So Ley Weaver, being able to untap 2 target lands, you can float 2 mana, untap them, float 2 more mana. and you're basically doubling up on those for Kruphix, but also Lore Weaver gives you a chance to have a mana sink. I know, Joey, you're a big fan of Stone Cedar Hierophant, which makes a lot of mana. There's Argothian Elder, which also is able to untap 2 target lands, but I like Ley Weaver specifically because the floor is higher than with Hierophant, but also it gets you a mana sink because of the partner with, or that you're just able to tutor up the other missing piece. I think these are both great. They're both played in about 2,000 decks total, but only 19 Kruphix decks are currently playing Ley Weaver, and even if you just need a really good mana dork, I think Ley Weaver is a really good option, especially considering all the lands out there in the format now that make more than 1 mana, whether it's Nykthos or Ancient Tomb even. There's a whole bunch of lands that make lots of mana, and I think both of those cards are just great options if you're looking to soup up your Kruphix deck.
Yeah, untapping the non-basic stuff, that's pretty spicy. And Matt, I can't believe that you're challenging stuff for a Simic deck. You're usually so combat focused that this is...
This is actually not Matt. I have been kidnapped, and this is not actually me. She, like I said, she even comes, like, he finds all these random cards from Scryfall, and I see it, I'm like, yeah, Ley Weaver. I mean, it was from Battle Bond, and a lot of people... I mean, Battle Bond's kind of old at this point, too. So, yeah, all those random uncommons from Battle Bond and those types of sets probably got forgotten about. So I just want to give a shout out to Ley Weaver and Lore Weaver. So nice job, friends.
Man, so, okay, you just mentioned Battle Bond right there. So I'm going to use this as a much more awkward segue to get back into our topic where we're talking about generally things that we hope to see in 2022. We went over some individual sets, but now let's go over some general stuff. And honestly, Battle Bond reminds me of just like, once again, talking about reprints. I don't know. Maybe I just can't shut up about this, but like Battle Bond lands, I would love to see those reprinted too. Like, there's just so many opportunities for stuff. And specifically when it comes to like precons, I would love to see something like the caliber of a Battle Bond land put into precons, because I just feel like they are so perfect for there. And having a nice mana base, like a nice mana base is a big, difficult hurdle to get into for a new player. So a nice mana base like Battle Bond lands, which aren't the tip top of the format, but still shouldn't be like $10+. That would just be a really lovely thing to see in precons this year. So let's talk about things that generally we want to see in 2022. Dana, I'll pass it to you. Do you share my love of Battle Bond lands, or are you going to talk about something else completely?
I love Battle Bond lands, but I would say if we don't get those, I would like to see them maybe finish some of the in-demand cycles out there. Yeah. Particularly like the Horizon lands, named after Modern Horizons / Horizon Canopy, that the ones where you could sacrifice the land to draw a card. It's a really, really good cycle, and I would love to have the opportunity to put those into all of my EDH decks. So if we don't get a reprint somewhere along the line of the Battle Bond lands, finish some of those good cycles. I think that would be something I would love to see them do more of.
Okay. Matt, anything for you?
So my most general hope for 2022 is 2021 was the year of the precon. I shouted that from the rooftops. I just want to see more continuation down that path. I love what the pre-constructed decks for Commander did in this past year. I want to see them keep progressing and keep improving that. It was one of the best tools. I love pre-constructed decks. I think they're one of the best tools to get players into the format. Keep making the format more accessible for new players, and so that means keep making these pre-constructed decks better and better. We've seen leaps and bounds of progress over the past couple of years with these, and just keep doing that, friends. Like, whoever is in charge of that, I want to give you a pat on the back if I ever see you, but also like keep up the great work.
And specifically, something that especially resonates for me is the ways that those precon commanders have been crafted, especially more recently. I think of Will Helt, which I know that Joey, as a necromancer himself, is really interested in the necromancy of a zombie deck. But specifically, Will Helt is a commander that has card advantage on it, but it's a card advantage that is at a good pace. There are other commanders that provide good card advantage, like Kadena, for example, that also has a very specific form of card advantage. Or we've seen Tuvasa in the past, who has just a once per turn limit on card advantage. And those are the types of card advantage that I feel like are really useful to explore when it comes to precon commanders. Like, newer players running out of cards in hand and getting stuck top decking is a really feels bad moment that kind of prevents players from sticking with a game of EDH after they pick up a precon. So there's this really weird reality where we do actually want card advantage to come on our commanders, especially in pre-constructed decks, but we don't want them to be of the the Tulane or the AC style levels of card advantage, because that is far too much. So we do need to see like an amount of advantage there, but it needs to be paced more like we've seen more recently. Because I just think that a problem arises when Wizards of the Coast makes ACs and Tatiovas by complete accident, but then, crafts an Audric the Bloodcursed on purpose, and they're surprised when the community doesn't resonate with it very much,
Well, I think you're being a little generous, Joey. Tatiova may have been an accident, but they definitely knew what was going on when they just copied it for AC. At that point,
that's true.
Oh, yeah, when they made it bigger and better and put it on a 6/6 body.
I did see a new player fairly recently playing with a AC deck, and in the hands of a brand new player, that was very much a solid kind of baby's first commander deck. It is very, very useful in a new player's hands to give them that advantage. But you're right. They need to find a way to temper that so the new players can enjoy that kind of commander and, not have to worry about top decking and have those things not ripple out into the format as a whole. When you first learn to bowl and they put the bumpers up in the lane, they take those down. And once you move on to bowling in a league, that's not a thing that happens in Commander. They don't give you the AC card and then be able to reduce what it does once you get to be a better player. That's just permanently part of the game. So yeah, that's the kind of thing they need to be really cautious about. Although I would say I think they've been doing a much better job in the last year to 18 months than they were kind of in this window around 2018 where they were just doing that Oprah thing where you get a free card and you get cards and you get 4 cards.
Yeah, if there's one absolutely busted commander per year, I think we're in pretty good shape. I think that's a very, very minimal hit rate. If that's the case, then we're doing just fine. Yes, it can be a little annoying, but then, like you said, Dana, new players, they have a chance to really kind of see what card advantage feels like. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. Now that once I depart from the specific commander, I know what to look for with other commanders as well. So I get it, but also I do share some of your frustrations.
Well, and so speaking of other legends there, Matt, this is actually something that I think Dana and I disagree about when it comes to the things we hope to see in 2022. Specifically, something that I would kind of like is to see just fewer legends overall. I think the Command Zone counted on their end-of-year wrap-up episode that there were 185 legends printed in 2021 and 186 from 2020. And for me, it's just feeling like too much and that they're kind of overshadowing each other a lot and that we're not letting good designs get enough time to breathe. But Dana, that's not a perspective that you share, and it sounds like you kind of disagree with me a little bit about that. So I want to hear more.
I don't disagree with the point you're making. I totally feel the same thing 100%. I'm just not sure the downside is that big of a deal. It's annoying to, I used to once upon a time when someone would mention a commander, I knew what it did. That ship has sailed. There's a lot of commanders when someone says their name, I have no idea what they're talking about. And that is a little bit annoying. And they're definitely a situation where new commanders come out and they don't get a chance to get enjoyed and they're forgotten about in the hustle and bustle. That absolutely happens. But I also think they're giving a lot of opportunities for people to build new decks and build kind of weird, unique decks. And, when they make Rakdos Guildmage into Bob Guildmage of Rakdos, and there's no really functional difference other than the legendary tag and the name, the card's going to play the same way in the deck where I want to run it, whether it's Bob or Rakdos Guildmage. But when you name it Bob, someone can use it for a commander. And I think the upside of providing opportunities outweighs the fact that I have no idea what you're talking about when you tell me you're playing Vendersplin of Wonder Falls or something, whatever, commander that probably came out that I just named that's actually real. You don't know. Listeners don't know. I could have named a real commander. They're not sure either. Nobody knows.
So Bob and Vendersplin sound like amazing partner commanders.
Yeah. So, I get what you're saying. I don't disagree with you, really. But I think the upsides probably outweigh the downsides.
I just get the feeling that if everything is special, nothing is special. And that's the point where I'm kind of struggling with it. I understand why they would want to make so many legendaries to give people so many options. But it makes everything feel a little less special by being legendary. And also, my big thing, just trying to follow the storyline, you don't know who the main character is if there's 1,000 players in the show. Like nothing gets to stand out. That's my biggest struggle. If they want to make all these random uncommon legends that have minimal effects, that's fine. There's just so many moving parts, and it's easy for stuff to get lost in the shuffle.
I mean, it's definitely weird in some planes where like, hey, here's my legendary gym teacher in Strixhaven. Like I don't know if there's a whole lot of flavor there compared to what you might see in Dominaria, but I mean, I'm fine with that, I guess.
Well, and specifically for me, I wonder if there's really been enough time to balance out the legendary consequences of some of those just suddenly being assigned as legendary status, and that also some of the opportunities are still not being taken when those opportunities are provided. You know, in Throne of Eldraine, we had the uncommon monocolored legends like Sir Conrad, which is like, my boy, I love that guy. But in that same cycle of legendary knights at uncommon, we also had Sir Alan the Lion's Claw.
I don't even know what that card does.
Right.
It's not good.
It's not real. He made it up, Matt. That's how much you didn't know.
That's why. Okay.
So it doesn't feel like those are necessarily the same caliber, so that like the fact that there can be more legends is just, it's a way of saying Commander players like more legends rather than like, I don't know, it becomes a quantity versus quality thing for me. And I think that some of the appeal gets lost when there is such a deluge of it. And specifically to Matt's point, you know, we recently got after a decade, we got a good werewolf commander. And when we got him, people were really happy, and then immediately we were on to the next thing, and we didn't get enough time to cherish it and breathe for that thing too. So it's all kind of wrapped into those things. So I wish that, you know, this presents opportunities that aren't always taken, and it also presents some complications that I hope are being measured.
And there are complications. That is a good point, Joey, because like I've noticed situations where I'm running less clone effects in decks because I look at my list and I'm like, wow, of my 21 creatures, 9 of them are legends now. Like it does actually impact some things. So, I mean, that is true. There are cascading effects from that kind of thing for sure.
So one thing I'm actually very curious about seeing is having some more just type of catch-up mechanics, or maybe even just keep players from just snowballing and going and getting bigger and bigger and bigger type of mechanics. There were some cards that we saw in the past few years, cards like Confounding Conundrum or Strict Proctor, that maybe they weren't really catch-up cards. They didn't stop people from doing things, but they didn't really either. I don't know if they were trying to tax things or just keep them from pulling away, but I don't know if they just did enough. But I would like to see more exploration into that space, because I think cards like Strict Proctor, they don't stop people from doing things altogether. It's not a purely kind of stacks or tax type of thing. Well, it does tax a little bit, but it slows them down a little and stops one person from absolutely running away with the game, which everyone who's played Commander has probably seen at least a couple games where one person just hits the perfect draw and just steamrolls. So having cards like Strict Proctor or Confounding Conundrum, I would like to see explored a little bit more, because I do think that when done right, they can be pretty effective without being absolutely backbreaking and unable to avoid.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Some way to stop green ramp, for example, or slow it up in a way that doesn't punish the rest of the table. Mass land destruction might, I guess, technically work, but that takes out everybody else too, right? Like I'm not sure if that's a necessary solution. And that's before we get into the fact that the green player can probably recover easier than anybody else.
Yeah, it's just like that's a lot of collateral damage, and a green player probably has the Ramen app or some equivalent to get the things back too. So it's just like, I'm not sure that works, but yeah, the less collateral damage, the better.
Yeah, ways to punish those things without punishing the whole table.
Yeah,
but that are also worth running in your deck, even if somebody isn't racing away with the ramp or something. It's definitely a difficult line to walk design wise, but like I would like to see them find ways to do that.
And specifically, what's kind of an issue with some of those is that a lot of those catch-up style cards don't necessarily mesh with each other very much. You know, a Knight of the White Orchid, more of those effects won't work with each other. Once you've caught up, you can't continue, you can't advance. They only ever help you catch up. And there are some designs that I hope are able to push past that more. That would be nice to see. I
mean, that's one of the reasons Archaeomancer's map worked so nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a card that kind of stacks, even if you already have a land tax or something in play, or you've already drawn that core cartographer or something. Those don't necessarily render one another redundant, which is a problem with some of these catch-up mechanics. So, yeah, I think they may have realized that, and hopefully we're going to see them continue to make those mechanics work better than maybe what we've seen in the past.
Well, and the nice thing about Archaeomancer's map, which I absolutely love, is even if you are still staying afloat. You don't need to catch up, but it at least helps you keep on par, which is another thing too. It helps you. If you are behind, it helps you catch up. But if you haven't fallen behind, it prevents you from falling behind. And I think that's a great design. So yeah, more cards like Archaeomancer's Map, I agree, Dana, would be a very welcome addition.
It would, and yet I'm also personally hungry for something that pushes past that. Like if this is the way that White's card draw, for example, will be, like, I don't know, the symmetrical card draw of the Secret Rendezvous stuff doesn't excite me. And the catch-up versions of it also make me feel like it'll help me catch up, but it won't help me push farther past. And I don't know, an idea that I floated before for a possible potential solution for like the white card advantage issue is that like this could be a color that has achievement based draw. If you happened to have a creature with triple its natural power, you draw extra cards, or if you happen to gain 10 or more life, you draw a card. Something like just do an act of heroism and you are inspired and draw cards that way, which feels like a very white way of presenting card advantage. You legend, you've done this thing. And that isn't just tied to, well, someone else is doing better than me and now I get to do slightly as good, because that can sometimes not feel as exciting. And I want a lot of incentives to build a mono white deck, and I'm not sure that they're there yet because so much of it involves catching up to other players. And while those are good and can be expanded upon, I still want to see something that throws me much farther forward than them too.
Well, and since we're talking about white stuff here, I also wish they would stop stapling their attempts at this to random 2/2 soldiers.
Sure.
I understand white is a creature color, but so is green, and every green draw effect isn't attached to an elf. But they really insist on it in white, and that's not a lot of fun when someone's playing like a Lyra Dawnbringer deck or something, and like, hey, here's my Lyra Angels deck that has 6 soldiers in it because that's the only way I can draw cards. I wish they would diversify that a little bit and put those on spells or enchantments or something, so you just didn't feel so tied to playing creatures that might not really match what your deck is doing.
And that so many of those contradict each other, too. Yeah. Mentor of the Meek will draw you cards if you play tiny creatures, and another huge part of White's slice of the color pie is anthems that make your creatures not tiny. So they keep on contradicting. It's just like, no, give me something that meshes.
Yeah, and one thing that you both kind of tiptoed on, but I really want to hammer home is incentivize playing less colors. Like, there's virtually no reason to play a monocolor deck in 2022. I would like to see the return of good, worth-playing commanders that are monocolor, having some sort of reason to do that, like maybe tax, multiple land types or whatever. I don't know how they want to execute it, but I would like to see a reason to play monocolor commanders because it really doesn't feel like there is much.
Yeah.
Well, not only wasn't there a reason to play monocolor commanders, there for a long while, they were very much encouraging you to play 5-color commanders and removing all of the downside.
Yeah.
So like, hey, I know in this deck that you have access to every single card in the format, but let's make that as easy as possible, which makes 0 sense, but they were doing that for a lot of years. I think they've kind of pulled back from that the last few years, but that was a thing for a long time. That felt real bad when you would see basically them removing every downside to having access to everything. So I'm glad they've kind of tempered that a little bit, and I think the opposite needs to happen now. Like you said, just give people reason to try monocolor decks.
I'm literally looking through EDHREC right now, looking through all of the sets pages, trying to find a set where one of the top 3 commanders from the set was a monocolored legend, and I just can't find any.
Yeah. The last time that a mono red commander was the most played commander was the original Theros with Perforos, God of the Forge.
Yeah.
Like that stat just blows my mind that there's virtually 0 reason to be playing monocolor decks anymore, and even 2-color. Like if you have a 2-color commander in mind, chances are there's a 3-color commander that probably does whatever you're trying to do except better.
Yeah, so providing incentives for playing fewer colors would be cool. And I would also like to see more incentives to make the high cost, like a 7-mana commander, a bit more viable as well. Like, I've always kind of wanted to build a Vishkal deck, but the fact that it's 7 mana has always prevented me from really wanting to build a Vishkal deck, because I might only ever get to cast it once, compared to a lot of the commanders that we see these days, which are either reducing their own costs or end up being 3, maybe 4 mana, and are more consistently able to play them multiple times. So having a way of incentivizing higher cost commanders is something that we've seen hints of this year with cards like Stinging Study that reward you for having a high cost commander, and I would love to see more ventured into that space for sure.
Well, Joey, I don't know if you've heard of this partner, but Vial Smasher is quite good at rewarding you for playing your 7 mana legendaries, just they have to be in the 99.
Okay. Well done, I suppose.
You've been lawyered. You're welcome.
I've been lawyered.
Well, we talked about giving things to white or doing a better job of giving things to white.
Oh, boy.
Maybe
I know where this is going.
Stop giving good things to green.
Dude.
And not even stop giving new things to green. Stop giving existing good things to green where you're like, oh, this thing is good. So let's retroactively take it and give it to green after it's proven itself to be good. That is a little bit frustrating, I think. Treasures being the most recent example that jumps out at me.
I'm so sad that the color that hates artifacts is now a color that regularly makes artifacts. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. More Old Gnawbone, not good. Smothering Tithe is a bit of a menace in the format, it's true, but like it also scaled well to the size of the format, which is not a thing that I can say about many cards in white. And it felt like it belonged there. Artificial mana doesn't make any sense in the color of nature. I don't like it. Don't give that to green. What is it doing there?
See, I understand why food would be in the green color realm, just because food is edible, life, etc. But I do agree. Treasures in green.
Well, in the Gnawbones thing was funny because people were like, well, treasures were part of green's color pie. Yeah, as of like a previous set, treasures didn't show up in green until Modern Horizons 2, which was like 3 or 4 years after we first got treasures. Sometimes WotC acts like the color pie is some kind of law of nature. Like, hey, water's wet. What can we do? No, you can do it. You can make that decision, and you did. Treasures weren't in green. They were in other colors, including white, prior to Modern Horizons 2. And then you decided to make them part of green, and your response was, they're part of green. What can we do? You did it. That's what you did. You could not do that.
I find it very weird that there are only like food tokens gain life, and gaining life is one of white's pieces of the color identity. And there are only like 3 cards in white that make food tokens. One of them is Bartered Cow, which is a commander staple, Bartered Cow. Like, I don't know, it feels like more of this token stuff could certainly go to white. And specifically, it could be not given to the color that already does a whole bunch of everything. Specifically, one of the things that I'm most terrified about is for green to get more Legends Matter focus, because Legends Matter feels like a situation that could belong more to white to let it sculpt out its own unique identity. But green has gotten a lot like Kolvori or things like that. Green gets a lot of rewards for playing legendary things or for playing planeswalkers. And I'm like, but that could have been white's thing. Don't give it to green. It doesn't need it.
Well, in much like treasures, it was a thing that was proven to be effective in other colors. So it was then given to green. It wasn't like it showed up in green for the first time. That's the part that kind of baffles my mind, is like, I don't understand why you feel the need to add things to green that weren't there when it was already very strong on Commander.
Well, and sometimes it feels too that cards that were almost a mistake by giving them a little bit of that in green, then they're like, well, we did it in green, so we're just going to expand upon that and just run with it. But that doesn't mean you just keep making the same mistake. you learn from your mistakes, and that's what we tell our children. So can we please tell our adults?
Dang. Okay. So, and also, like, this has been a bit more of a critical section of the cast here, and I'll bet out there, like, we're all tired of listening to these points about green can do everything and white doesn't have enough in EDH. But it's been that way for like a decade, and it's still an issue. And it's just like, this is the kind of thing that we hope gets a move on.
Just let these old men yell at the clouds. We'll be done in a minute.
No, absolutely. We're doing the old men yelling thing. It is absolutely. We're completely guilty of that. But I guess one of the reasons that it feels like we have a reason to feel this way is because we are told in marketing things like powerful white cards in this set, and then we get Seraphic Greatswords. And so it just, this is still an ongoing thing that we hope gets improved upon. 1 year will not solve it. That is absolutely true. But there are small problems that we've noticed over the course of time that we just hope can all begin to course correct in 2022. So a lot of waffling, certainly a lot of getting some stuff off of our chest here, but I don't know, it feels cathartic to me. I hope it feels cathartic to the listeners and not just aggravating. And also, having talked about food tokens now, I kind of want to go have a food token. Excuse me, I mean food. I don't eat magic cards. I did not phrase that very well.
I don't believe you for some reason, and call me crazy.
Marrow always says, do not eat the delicious magic cards.
Joey thinks that blue core are the most delicious of magic cards. Black core, not so much.
I've got, you guys are so silly. I've got another kind of rounding it out question that I hope takes us more in a, like, activate the excitement, our expectations here, not just about stuff that we don't want to see, but also about some stuff that we really, really do want to see. And specifically, this actually comes from a very positive experience that I had in 2020 and 2021. In 2020, I was really looking around to build a black-white tokens deck. I really wanted to build it, but I couldn't find a commander that exactly fit for it. And then we, on the EDHRECast, got a preview card, Thalise Reverent Medium, and she was everything I could have wanted and more, and she's my baby. I love it. Then in 2021, I was really looking at, I kind of want to play around with like goad stuff and combat manipulation. And not only did I get Cardor in that year, I also got Karazakar, and it's been so much fun to do that. So I guess here I want to ask if there is a specific commander space that you guys want to see filled. Are there any gaps in your deck building arsenal that you hope 2022 will help you guys fill out?
I think in a general sense, I would like to see a little bit of bleed into kind of tangential colors for tribal decks. For example, in Kaldheim, we got, they really fleshed out black-green elves, and they kind of fleshed out white-black angels. There had been black angels before, and there had been kind of black stuff with elves, but we really got that cemented as something you could play in that particular set. I'd like to see a little more of that. You could very easily add more support to encourage playing black-red goblins or red-green goblins, for example, or you could add a little more support in white or black for merfolk. So white, blue merfolk or black-white merfolk is a thing. A little more of that, so like you can see some maybe non-typical color pairings for those kind of specific decks.
Interesting. Very interesting. I am not sure what to think of a black-white merfolk deck, but you have me intrigued, sir.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work, but we'll let you keep thinking that's going to happen.
There you go. Matt, how about you? Any commander gaps that you hope 2022 will come along and find something that you've always wanted, maybe?
So my big thing, and Gavin Verhey, who works for Wizards of the Coast, has said a few times that one of their big points of emphasis is to make sure that whenever there's a new mechanic that is introduced in his set or a block, that there's going to be a legend to accommodate that. So you can play an energy tribal type of commander, which if they could redo Kaladesh, they would have done. I want to see them keep doing that. So there's not a mechanic or a new tribe, for example, that doesn't have a commander so that you can really play with that. So if in New Capenna, if they dialed in on the demon tribal that they've kind of hinted at, there's a proper demon tribal type of legend so you can play all those demons that were introduced, or whatever it is, whatever new mechanic that they introduce in the Brothers War, there's a commander to go along with that. So it's always kind of weird to see them be very excited about a new mechanic, but then you can't really play a deck centered around that mechanic because there's no commander to support it. So I hope they keep kind of emphasizing that if they introduce a mechanic, there's a commander to go along with that mechanic so you can properly play that in Commander.
That is, yeah, I would also really enjoy that. You're right. The lack of an energy style commander does feel like, hey, we need that. We want that thing. So yeah, that is very much, I would love to see that continued for sure. I've got a weird one. This is my personal hope. The next type of deck that I'd be really, really excited to build is something a la Rat Colony, where you can have any number of those things in your deck. But I think that's an effect that really belongs in white. I would love to see a white version of that, like soldiers, that they all depend upon each other, the similitude, the organization, the self-buffing. Like, I would love to see that as a thing that mono white maybe branches into. So I want to see a mono white version of like a Rat Colony style effect. I hope this is my year.
Or Joey, think about this. We could move that to green instead.
Dana, don't do this to me. No. You're right. We had 4 Boros equipment sets in a row in the past year, so can't wait to see 2022 with more Boros equipment decks.
No, okay. Hear me out, Joey. Mono white equipment. Never been done before.
Problem solved.
No, I will not let you do this to me, Dana. We've had Rat Colony. We've had Persistent Petitioners. We've even had a red version of it with the Dragon's Approach. You know, any number of cards. This is the time this year. I'm really hoping that there's going to be a new one for mono white. I can feel it. I can feel it. Don't take this away from me. I am manifesting this into existence, Dana.
I'm going to foretell that you're going to be disappointed.
No!
I drank the magic 8-ball water, Joey, and it said it doesn't look good. Now I need to go to the hospital. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Oh, brother, you guys. Okay, with all of that, with all of this dreaming about stuff that we hope to see in 2022, I think we ought to call this episode to a close. And of course, ask our listeners, what do you want to see in this coming year as well? We would love to know your thoughts, the things that you hope to see from the upcoming sets or from pre-con, stuff like that. Definitely let us know in the comments. And fellas, if our listeners would like to get in touch with us, where is it that they can find us all? Matt?
So you can find me on the Twitters at Mathimus55, that's MATHIMUS55. And don't forget, Wednesday evenings, we are streaming over at twitch.tv/EDHRECast. Wednesday evenings, we have guests on every single week. It's always a super fun time. Our guests are great. We're okay, but the guests are the real reason to tune in. So make sure you watch the games because they're always a blast.
And Dana, put down that 8-ball. Where can listeners find you?
You can find me at the hospital for drinking the Magic 8-Ball water. Also, I'm on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can hear me on my other podcast, CMDR Central. I'm writing articles for both EDHREC and Commander's Herald, and you can find us all together at patreon.com/EDHRECast.
And I'm Joey Schultz. You can find me at Joseph M. Schultz on Twitter, and you can find the cast at EDHRECast on both Facebook and on Twitter. Plus, if you've got a question for us, you can contact us at EDHRECast@gmail.com. Our thanks go out once again to Josh Lee Kwai and the whole team at the Command Zone for handling the post-production work on our podcast. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors, TCG Player and CardKingdom.com. Plus, you can visit altersleeves.com/EDHRECast for cool custom EDHRECast sleeves. Listeners, we'll be back at you next week with more data and insights, but until then, remember, EDH wreck your deck before you wreck your deck.